Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back.
I learned so much stuff on the break.
We always do.
And Joe's over here still having his own private show. Right?
That is correct. Yeah, he always does that. Yes.
It's a subject I'm passionate
Joe thinks the mics are directional, but we can still hear everything he's saying.
That's right. Yeah. Well, welcome back to the show, Joe.
Hey!
We appreciate that.
Well, as usual, off air, we were having a great conversation, and the lovely realtor here to my left was asking Kitty about the deed of assuming the deed back and how often that happens, and everybody was kind of surprised that it happens way more than you would think.
So anyway,
we'll talk about that.
We're going to talk about that in our last segment because let's don't forget another important thing. Tim O'Neill is here today.
That is true.
In the house.
In the house, Mr. Tim O'Neill.
Our great State Farm agent, and State Farm is a great company, and I think it's probably the world's most recognized insurance company name out there.
That is correct. And we got Tim O'Neill, the most recognizable.
So he's a two-timer now.
He's a two-timer as well.
So Tim, the call comes in.
I already made enough remarks about my wife last week, too.
You got to dig out the
price on that one.
Back off the two-timer.
He's put the shovel down, and he is backing away from the shovel.
That was funny, though. That was funny.
Yeah. So you get the call, hey, Tim, I need to get a price on some renter's insurance, and how much would it cost to increase my wife's life insurance?
Yeah, a little red flag there. Right? We're trained for that. As you know, there's no aspect of modern life that can exist without insurance. We touch everything. And our knowledge base, we have to be an inch deep and a mile wide. We may not be a drill-down expert in everything, but we have to know what to listen for, and we have to know how to protect our customers' rights. And the first thing that we sometimes have to educate people about is people will call up and say, hey, we're separated. And we have to tell them that, no, you're not, because in Texas, there is no legal separation.
And we verified that with Kitty before we said that, by the way.
She's nodding.
Divorce.
For those out there in radio land, she is nodding.
Yes.
It's an affirmative assent.
All of the contracts and policies that are in both names or touch both parties are still in full force and effect, even though you're broken up and not living together anymore. So we start there. And we can do things like you can separate the billing, like if you have two cars. They're on the same policy, and it still applies to both, but we can break it up so you can pay for your own car.
Yeah. Well, the thing that we talked about, actually this week, during the midweek, he goes, so Rob, I've got some things to talk about on divorce. I go, really, what happens? And you're talking about, it doesn't happen with State Farm being a big company, but some of these little companies will take a call from one of the spouses and cancel the other spouse's insurance. So talk a little bit about that.
If you're just processing a transaction without thinking, and one person calls in and say, hey, you know what, take my wife off, cancel the Ford. And then if you just cancel the Ford without realizing that, this guy just called in and had us cancel the policy on his wife's car. They're broken up or they're separated and we didn't know about it. And if you just do it, can't
cancel the Ford, but make sure the Maserati is still covered.
Yeah. Well, when I teach classes, I always go, what could go wrong? That really exposes that other person to possible huge losses.
It does, losses and driving without insurance and tickets and so it's just a question of knowing your customers and protecting their rights and not choosing sides, because oftentimes we'll have known one spouse a lot longer than, we may have had the one guy when he was single and he got married and we don't really know the wife or the other way around. But, you have to respect all parties' rights and listen for things and cannot choose sides and make sure that everyone, we have an obligation to make sure that we protect their rights, and we do.
And that's been a common theme with Joni, with you, obviously with Kitty. Same exact thing is to do the right thing, and at the end of the day, trying to make sure that level heads prevail in the situation.
You have to know what the right thing to do is. That's the thing. People can be in good faith but ignorant.
Right.
And make all kinds of mistakes because they just didn't know any better, and they weren't trying to hurt anybody, but hello, they didn't know any better.
But oftentimes they are trying to hurt somebody. That's
true,
I think that happens probably more often than not.
Well, then how about unintended consequences also are something that obviously tend to arise as well. Like when Joe called in, everything he did, and I know Joe very well, everything he was doing through his divorce, he was thinking about his children the whhole time.
We're
not
talking
the practical
about Joe
situation.
We're talking about our caller, Joe.
Yes, that is correct. That is our caller, Joe.
Maybe we're still happily married.
Yes.
As long as you get that new house, we stay happily married.
Yes, exactly. As long as you get that home for him, he'll be set. But that's what ends up happening, though, a lot of times is, you end up trying to make a decision that you think is best for maybe one part of the transaction, one part of the party, and you have an unintended consequence that ends up affecting something else associated with that.
All the time. Here's an example. Let's say one spouse gets the right to occupy the house in the divorce, and I've had this. He has the right to occupy it and possess it, but not the right to sell it. And so the other spouse continues to have an insurable interest in that house, and if you have to keep them on the policy, and if there's a liability loss at that property, they're both technically attached to it, even though one has the right to possess, or it could be a life estate or whatever the arrangement is. But then when there's a claim payment and we have to write a check, we still have to write the check to both parties, even though really only one, and then they have to decide,
and if they're arguing spouses.
Yeah, and they both have to sign the draft, and it can get a little
Kitty
scary.
is nodding her head again, so we're just affirming everything like that.
Yep. But the biggest thing that came to my mind when we talked about this show concept, and the only thing, a lot of things we've talked about so far have been transactional and just doing the right thing. But the one thing I'm passionate about in this context is, and Kitty touched on it, when you have child support payments, or you're anticipating accumulating money for college and doing all the things for these children.
Right.
If the payor dies or becomes disabled, that's a problem, right? So it's possible and very, very simple. And I encourage divorce attorneys, family law attorneys, and everyone in that practice to call me and let's see about getting a little very inexpensive term life insurance policy on the payor of these benefits, if they're paying child support or whatever, that the receiving spouse owns and controls, so that she owns the policy, the bill comes to her, and she pays it, and now we're protected if there's a tragedy, and this fellow might have been in good faith and might have intended to make all these
accidentally
payments.
Shot 6 times.
Yeah, but there you go. And so it's very simple to do that. It's very inexpensive, and the attorneys can work
brutal
it out
demise over here.
It happens. And it's the right thing to do, and I've done it, many, many times, and it's what you're supposed to do. And you can even go before that. This gets scary. Sometimes we'll have newly married young couples coming in on the front side before the divorce, right? And we always talk to them about getting your house in order and building your foundation, which includes life insurance, whatever. So we recommend to them, because it's the good thing to do, is that they own each other's policy. It's called cross ownership. I own the policy on my wife, and she owns the policy on me. So that if we get divorced in the future, now it's already set up.
And we're not going to hurt each other.
Yeah, because what happens is someone gets remarried, and now the new wife is writing out checks, and she's paying for the life insurance policy where the former spouse is the sole beneficiary. And that might not always be the first bill to get paid when there's a stack of bills to pay. So we can prevent all of that up front with just, knowing your job and doing the right thing, protecting your clients, looking forward.
And and what you just got through saying, and I wanted to go off of this, is I tell everybody all the time is that's a little thing, whether you be going through divorce or not going through divorce or just buying or starting off your life, that term life insurance you're talking about in that life is absolutely vital. I tell everybody it's one of those things you have to have in place because life changes for better, for worse.
I don't think anybody
injuries,
wakes up and says, I'm going to die today. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. I'm pretty sure that death catches most people by surprise.
Right.
Right? It does happen where somebody's aware, but most of the time it's a surprise. And that is one of the places where people are probably the most uninsured, unprotected areas of life, and it's something I'm passionate about. I'm like, as a dad, I'm like, if you don't have your wife and children covered, and at least to make sure that the house is taken care of and immediate bills and that type of thing, you're not doing your job as a dad. I mean, I get really passionate about that. It's a big deal to me.
You're right. And to your prior point, a family is a business, and capitalizing a business and ensuring the long-term success and succession plan for a business, all of those things. And that's what we do. We help you capitalize your family on a sound basis so that you're not...
one of the themes of our show always is work with experts.
Yep.
You simply don't know what you don't know. And the best intended person can set themselves up for damage without even knowing it, simply because of lack of knowledge, right? And when you're going through something as emotional as a divorce, even if you are a really knowledgeable and intelligent person, you can inherently just make bad decisions because emotions have taken control. And that's where it's critical to have someone like Kitty to, hey, at this point, just do what the heck she says, right?
Well,
don't argue about it. Just do what the heck she says.
That's the other caveat, especially when you get really smart people who think they know everything, and they say, well, I don't need. when you hire a professional, listen to them. They you may have been through a circumstance one time. They've been through it 1,000 times. They know what they're talking about. So, I mean, always listen to experts. And we got 3 of them in the room right now.
Absolutely. So when the expert tells you, look, the best thing, I know you don't want to stir up the kid's life. The best thing is to put the house on the market, sell it, and let's get into something more affordable and everything else. And you can start building your own new memories and all that sort of thing on your own. Do that. That's why you'll reach out to Jody. Get the house on the market, get it sold, and find a new place. That's the best advice, I think. Period.
And of course, if you do sell the house, you must close it at capital title.
You have to close.
Got to close it at capital title, and you need
no
to talk to
question
Tim
about
to
that.
make sure the insurance is properly positioned.
But that does bring up a lot of things that can occur that I think people don't think about when they're going through that stressful time. They're not thinking about that stuff.
No.
And I get Kitty with a nod. Go ahead and say, do you talk to them about their insurance policies?
We do. We had an interesting situation that came up in one of our clients' cases where one of the spouses was disabled and she was a rider on the husband's the husband's life insurance policy, and we had to work with the life insurance company to be able to spin the wife off into her own policy and her not lose her life insurance, because with having a disability, sometimes it's hard for you to get life insurance, and as a rider on the policy, she couldn't stay on his policy, so we had to get her into her own insurance policy. So we run into situations like that all the time. And we do counsel. We try to talk to people about child support, insurance trusts, to do a life insurance policy that benefits a trust set up for your children in the event you die prior to their 18th birthday.
Tim,
amen
we're
to all the above. And the thing is that we can't manage a policy that you haven't bought. So we can bring to bear all of our skills and help you do all these things, but not if you didn't have the foresight 10 years ago to buy the darn thing to begin with, so that we can then do all these things for you.
A basic term life plan is one of the most affordable pieces of insurance you can get, and at the very least, if for folks who are listening, and this is a shameless plug for Tim over here, but I believe. I mean, I'm truly am passionate about it, and I believe it. I mean, I have insurance out the wazoo in this aspect. If there's
what is a wazoo, by the way?
We'll clarify later.
Okay.
If there was one thing that folks were listening here, happily married or otherwise, would do, get at least enough insurance if the income earner of the family were to pass away, that it took care of your house and at least some immediate expenses. It is so affordable. It's so affordable. And Tim, on that note, how do people call you to get that taken care of?
281-358-4444. In sports terminology, that's 281 Ruth DiMaggio Berra, Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig, Lou Gehrig.
That is incredible. What? That is the infamous Tim O'Neill, one of our great sponsors. But we still have one more segment to go. We have open mic coming up, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Bad to the bone. I broke 1,000 hearts before I met you.